Send us your messages, your text messages, your WhatsApp messages. 061-798-1075. That's when it comes to WhatsApp or Telegram. But we've got to say thank you for your time, Nico Kleynhans. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you and morning listeners. Just a reminder that there are two segments this morning. You need to hear all three stories. Otherwise, you're going to want to jump off the roof of your house.
True story.
And don't stop halfway around. Sometimes it's very difficult to explain to a foreigner what it's like living in South Africa. And I want to talk about two stories that have hit the news in the last few days. And for me, that illustrates something of what it is like for some of us. And the first relates to the club in East London. Now, they decided to organize an event aimed at teenagers. And the entrance fee to enter that particular club was to pay 50 rand or 100 rand if you wanted a VIP ticket. And the idea was you pay, and once you're inside, you get unlimited access to alcohol and unlimited access to food. And also in that particular venue, there was a generator. Now that was linked to what Eskom was doing, and the generator was running while this event was happening. Now, the problem is, of course, the fumes were now being released inside that particular building. As the evening progressed, the security officer noticed that some of the teenagers were losing consciousness, and he assumed that they were drunk. So he tried to open the door and to remove them from the venue. And every time he did that, more teenagers would force their way in. So we had the chaos of him having to use pepper spray to prevent new people from coming in, and also to get rid of the people that he thought was unconscious because they were drunk. And he then just dumped him outside and closed the door. And when there were a few more lying around on the floor, he did the same with those things. By 3 o'clock, the police were called because people realized that something was wrong, because those teenagers that he dumped outside were not moving at all. And in fact, we now know that some of them were drunk, but others had died, and he just hadn't picked up. Now, once the police started getting there, they couldn't get into the nightclub venue either. They eventually had to force the door, and they moved in and began to clear everybody out. There was absolute confusion, and as of yesterday, one of those teenagers was still lying in the morgue, not having been claimed by their relatives. Now, I happen to have friends who grew up in that township, and so there was a lot of discussion about what exactly happens. And their explanation to me was that for teenagers in these particular venues, there is, in fact, no entertainment of any kind. So when a shebeen or a nightclub then opens up an event like this, those kids will do anything under the sun to collect the 50 or the 100 rand. And once they come in, as young as 13, will be let in. Now, the question is, we have laws in this country that says if you have a shebeen, no underage drinking is allowed. That law was ignored by the owners and the security. They have to take some responsibility there. You cannot serve alcohol to teenagers. Even if that was legal, you've got to get your clothes up by 2 a.m. By 3 a.m., there's still a lot of activity happening at that particular club. Our problem is not that we don't have rules that govern these events. The problem is that there are no consequences if a shebeen owner breaks the rules. And the organs of the state have failed because they do not enforce the rules. So now we have a tragedy that a number of teenagers have died. Many of them, in fact, about 8 of those who passed away, their families didn't even know they were attending this particular event. There are going to be consequences. There have to be consequences. Now the liquor board has blocked the license, and those people can no longer operate. But it's kind of waiting until the horse is bolted before you do anything. Now I want to talk about Eskom. There were wage negotiations between Eskom and the 2 main trade unions. The trade unions wanted around 15% increases in salary. Eskom offered around 4.5%. And so, of course, the negotiations reached a deadlock and a dispute was declared. At 9 power stations, staff decided to take matters into their own hands. So, on average, about 100 people at each of those 9 power stations decided to hold everybody working at Eskom hostage. They blocked the entrances. They wouldn't allow people to go to work. They wouldn't allow people to perform any kind of maintenance. Eskom went to court. The court ruled that this was an unprotected strike. It was illegal. The rules are clear. These people now need to be dismissed. The past few days have cost South Africa 12 billion rand in lost revenue. Not one criminal, and these are now criminals, has been arrested. Again, we have sufficient laws, but if the authorities fail to enforce the laws, then we have what we've had the past few days: load shedding level 4, load shedding level 6. And it's now at the point where I get a message saying, cut down on the use of my electricity. I don't care anymore, because I don't feel that Eskom and Gwede Mantashe have South Africa's interests in mind. And even when the CEO says, I've handed the police the names, he says the police say they're not going to prosecute. So how then do we move forward? Now, this is half of the story. We're going to talk about the other half. Why then do I still have hope as a Christian?
Very good. And that's what we're going to be doing in the Story of Hope segment. So stick around for that, ladies and gentlemen.